Project Earth. This documentary explains what an open source society is and why it would be better than our current trading, political, religious-based society. Enjoy! Freedom of thought and freedom of speech allows the good ideas to float and the bad ideas to sink. Therefore, the only way to get to the truth is through freedom of speech. In a decaying society, art, if it is truthful, must also reflect decay. And unless it wants to break faith with its social function, art must show the world as changeable and help to change it. In the past, throughout almost all of human history, the main threat to human survival was nature. Today, it is culture. Deadly riots over the government's plan to avoid defaulting on its loans is that the unemployment keeps rising, and it has to keep rising just because you have an excess supply of goods. This is all borrowed money that our kids will have to repay. And that debt is owned by banks in other countries. M-O-N-E-Y, in the form of a convenient personal loan. Show me a filter cigarette that delivers the taste, and I'll eat my hat. 45. Malt liquor. Are you hot? Is the US planning to bomb Iran? There are claims that America is sponsoring terror attacks in Iran. The allegations come from a militant group's leader, who was captured in Iran on Tuesday. He says he met with CIA agents in Pakistan, who promised to supply arms to his organization. That's a claim Washington denies. There's strong, and then there's army strong. There is an analogy that comes from the world of games. It was used quite some time ago by a psychologist named James Dobson. I first learned it from my grandmother. Now, my grandmother was a wonderful person. She taught me how to play the game Monopoly. She understood that the name of the game is to acquire. She would accumulate everything she could, and eventually she would become the master of the board. And then she would always say the same thing to me. She'd look at me and she'd say, "One day, you'll learn to play the game." One summer I played Monopoly almost every day, all day long. And that summer, I learned to play the game. I came to understand that the only way to win is to make a total commitment to acquisition. I came to understand that money and possessions, that's the way that you keep score. And by the end of that summer, I was more ruthless than my grandmother. I was ready to bend the rules if I had to win that game. And I sat down with her to play that fall. I took everything she had. I watched her give her last dollar and quit in utter defeat. And then she had one more thing to teach me. Then she said, "Now it all goes back in the box. All those houses and hotels, all the railroads and utility companies, all that property, and all that wonderful money. Now it all goes back in the box. None of it was really yours. You got all heated up about it for a while, but it was around a long time before you sat down at the board. And it will be here after you're gone. Players come, players go. Houses and cars, titles and clothes, even your body. Because the fact is that everything I clutch and consume and hoard is going to go back in the box, and I'm going to lose it all." So you have to ask yourself, when you finally get the ultimate promotion, when you've made the ultimate purchase, when you buy the ultimate home, when you have stored up financial security and climbed the ladder of success to the highest rung you can possibly climb it, and the thrill wears off, and it will wear off, then what? How far do you have to walk down that road before you see where it leads? Surely you understand. It will never be enough. So you have to ask yourself the question, what matters?
The reason we're here is that it's out of control.
Modern psychology has a word, which is probably used more than any other word in psychology. It is the word maladjusted. And there are some things in our society which I am proud to be maladjusted. And I call upon all men of goodwill to be maladjusted to these things until the good society is realised. In any case, the path to establishing an ideal society is a long journey and our time is limited. If we forget to take a step forward every day, that journey could stretch to infinity. Therefore, what is it that a cross needs the most, Excel?
Me? Could it be like money?
No, if you mean the valueless currency that is currently being circulated within the current corrupt society, then a cross needs none of that. What do we need? We need resources! Acquiring resources is what we need to successfully realize our ideals. Resources! Let's imagine for a moment we had the option to redesign human civilization from the ground up. What if, hypothetically speaking, we discovered an exact replica of the planet Earth, and the only difference between this new planet and our current one is that human evolution had not occurred. It was an open palette. No countries, no cities, no pollution, no Republicans, just a pristine open environment. So, what would we do? Well, first we need a goal, right? And it's safe to say that goal would be to survive. And not to just survive, but to do so in an optimized, healthy, and prosperous way. Most people indeed desire to live, and they would prefer to do so without suffering. Therefore, the basis of this civilization needs to be as supportive and hence sustainable for human life as possible, taking into account the material needs of all the world's people while trying to remove anything that could hurt us in the long run. With that goal of maximum sustainability understood, the next question regards our method. What kind of approach do we take? Well, let's see. Last I checked, politics was the method of social operation on Earth. So what did the doctrines of the Republicans, Liberals, Conservatives, or Socialists have to say about societal design? Not a damn thing. Okay then, what about religion? Surely the great creator had to have left some blueprints somewhere. Nope, nothing I can find. Okay then, so what's left? It appears something called science. Science is unique in that its methods demand not only that ideas proposed be tested and replicated, but everything science comes up with is also inherently falsifiable. In other words, unlike religion and politics, science has no ego, and everything it suggests accepts the possibility of being proven wrong eventually. It holds on to nothing and evolves constantly. Well, that sounds natural enough to me. Anytime scientists disagree, it's because we have insufficient data. Then we can agree on what kind of data to get, we get that data, and the data solves the problem. Either I'm right, or you're right, or we're both wrong, and we move on. That kind of conflict resolution does not exist in politics or religion. So then, based on the current state of scientific knowledge in the early 21st century, along with our goal of maximum sustainability for the human population, how do we begin the actual process of construction? Well, the first thing to ask is, what do we need to survive? And the answer, of course, is planetary resources. Whether it is the water we drink, the energy we use, or the raw materials we use to create tools and shelter, the planet hosts an inventory of resources, many of which are demanded for our survival. So given that reality, it then becomes critical to figure out what we have and where it is. This means we need to conduct a survey. We simply locate and identify every physical resource on the planet we can, along with the amount available at each location, from the deposits of copper, to the most potent locations for wind farms to produce energy, to the natural freshwater springs, to an assessment of the amount of fish in the ocean, to the most prime arable land for food cultivation, etc. But since we humans are going to be consuming these resources over time, we then realize that not only do we need to locate and identify, we also need to track. We need to make sure we don't run out of any of this stuff. That would be bad. And this means not only tracking our rates of use, but the rates of earthly regeneration as well, such as how long it takes for, say, a tree to grow, or a spring to replenish. This is called dynamic equilibrium. In other words, if we use up trees faster than they can grow back, we have a serious problem, for it is unsustainable. So then, how do we track this inventory, especially when we recognize that all this stuff is scattered everywhere? We have large mineral mines in what we call Africa, energy concentrations in the Middle East, huge tidal power possibilities on the Atlantic coast of North America, the largest supply of fresh water in Brazil, etc. Well, once again, good old science has a suggestion. It's called systems theory. Systems theory recognizes that the fabric of the natural world, from human biology to the earthly biosphere to the gravitational pull of the solar system itself, is one huge, synergistically connected system, fully interlinked. Just as human cells connect to form our organs, and the organs connect to form our bodies, and since our bodies cannot live without the earthly resources of food, air, and water, we are intrinsically connected to the earth, and so on. So as nature suggests, we take all of this inventory and tracking data and create a system to manage it. A global resource management system, in fact, to account for every relevant resource on the planet. There is simply no logical alternative if our goal as a species is survival in the long run. We have to keep track as a whole. That understood, we can now consider production. How do we use all this stuff? What will our process of production be? And what do we need to consider to make sure it is as optimized as possible to maximize our sustainability? Well, the first thing that jumps right out at us is the fact that we need to constantly try and preserve. The planet's resources are essentially finite, so it is important that we be strategic. Strategic preservation is the key. The second thing we recognize is that some resources are really not as good as others in their performance. In fact, some of this stuff, when put into use, has a terrible effect on the environment, which invariably hinders our own health. For example, oil and fossil fuels. No matter how you cut it, they release some pretty destructive agents into the environment. Therefore, it is critical we do our best to use such things only when we really have to, if at all. Fortunately for us, we see a ton of solar, wind, tidal, wave, heat differential and geothermal possibilities for energy production, so we can strategize objectively about what we use and where, to avoid what could be called negative retroactions, or anything that results from production or use that damages the environment and hence ourselves. We will call this strategic safety to couple in with our strategic preservation. But production strategies do not stop there. We are going to need an efficiency strategy for the actual mechanics of production itself. And what we find is that there are roughly 3 specific protocols that we must adhere to. 1. Every good we produce must be designed to last as long as possible. Naturally, the more things break down, the more resources we are going to need to replace them, and the more waste produced. 2. When things do break down, or are no longer usable for whatever reason, it is critical that we harvest or recycle as much as we possibly can. So the production design must take this into account directly at the very earliest stages. 3. Quickly evolving technologies such as electronics, which are subject to the fastest rates of technological obsolescence, would need to be designed to foreshadow and accommodate physical updates. The last thing we want to do is throw away an entire computer system just because it has only one broken part or is outdated. So we simply design the components to be easily updated, part by part, standardized and universally interchangeable, foreshadowed by the current trend of technological change. And when we realize that the mechanisms of strategic preservation, strategic safety, and strategic efficiency are purely technical considerations devoid of any human opinion or bias, we simply program these strategies into a computer which can weigh and calculate all the relevant variables, allowing us to always arrive at the absolute best method for sustainable production based on current understandings. And while that might sound complex, all it is a glorified calculator. Not to mention that such multivariate decision-making and monitoring systems are already used across the world today for isolated purposes. It is simply a process of scaling it out. So, now we not only have our resource management system, but also a production management system, both of which are easily computer automated to maximize efficiency, preservation, and safety. The informational reality is that the human mind, or even a group of humans, cannot track what needs to be tracked. It must be done by computers, and it can be. And this brings us to the next level, distribution. What sustainability strategies make sense here? Well, since we know that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, and since energy is required to power transport vehicles, the less transport distance, the more efficient. Producing goods in one continent and shipping them over to another only makes sense if the goods in question simply cannot be produced in the target area. Otherwise, it is nothing but wasteful. We must localize production so distribution is simple, fast, and requires the least amount of energy. We'll call this the proximity strategy, which simply means we reduce the travel of goods as much as possible, whether raw materials or finished consumer products. Of course, it might also be important to know what goods we are transporting and why. And this falls under the category of demand. And demand is simply what people need to be healthy and to have a high quality of life. The spectrum of material human needs range from core life-supporting necessities such as food, clean water, and shelter, to social and recreational goods, which allow for relaxation and personal social enjoyment, both important factors in human and social health overall. So very simply, we take another survey. People describe their needs, demand is assessed, and production begins based on that demand. And since the level of demand of different goods will naturally fluctuate and change around different regions, we need to create a demand distribution tracking system so to avoid overruns and shortages. Of course, this idea is old news. It is used in every major store chain today to make sure they keep up with their inventory. Only this time, we are tracking on a global scale. But wait a minute. We really can't fully understand demand if we don't account for the actual usage of the good itself. Is it logical and sustainable for every single human to, say, have one of everything made, regardless of their usage? No, that would be simply wasteful and inefficient. If a person has a need for a good, but that need is only for, say, 45 minutes a day on average, it would be much more efficient if that good was made available to them and to others when needed. Many forget that it isn't the good that they want, it is the purpose of that good. When we realize that the good itself is only as important as its utility, we see that external restriction, or what some might call today ownership, is extremely wasteful and environmentally illogical in a fundamental economic sense. So, we need to devise a strategy called strategic access. This would be the foundation of our demand distribution tracking system, which makes sure we can meet the demand of the population's needs for access of whatever they need when they need it. And as far as physically obtaining the goods, centralized and regional access centers all make sense for the most part, placed in close proximity to the population, and a person would simply come in, take the item, use it, and when finished, return it when it is no longer needed. Sort of how a library works today. In fact, these centers could not only exist in the community in the way we see local stores today, but specialized access centers would exist in specific areas where often certain goods are utilized, saving more energy with less repeat transport. And once this demand tracking system is in order, it is tied into our production management system, and of course into our resource management system, hence creating a unified, dynamically updating global management machine that simply makes sure we remain sustainable. Starting with securing the integrity of our finite resources, moving to make sure we only create the best, most strategic goods possible, while distributing everything in the most intelligent and efficient way. And the unique result of this preservation-based approach, which is intuitively counter to many, is that this logical, ground-up, empirical process of preservation and efficiency, which can only define true human sustainability on this planet, would likely enable something never before seen in human history: access abundance. Not just for a percentage of the global population, but the entire civilization. This economic model, as was just generalized, this responsible, systems approach to total Earth resource management and processes, designed again to do nothing less than to take care of humanity as a whole in the most efficient and sustainable way, could be termed a resource-based economy, a natural law economy, or an open source society. From open source software to open source hardware, it becomes clear that for scientific advancement to go beyond a certain point, humanity would need to make a significant jump or value shift from a religious, property-based society to an open source, scientifically based society. Religion, the dominion of the human mind. Property, the dominion of human needs. And government, the dominion of human conduct, represent the stronghold of man's enslavement and all the horrors it entails. Any design that someone comes up with would be recorded into a public domain or library, because an invention is actually a discovery, since our reality has already allowed the design to exist. The current social value of claiming ownership is halting our social evolution. Property, as it's currently understood, ignores how our reality works. Nothing can be separated from society. Everything is interconnected. This fact is clearly shown through the man-made enforcement of copyright. It is not a natural law. So, this idea of a resource-based economy was defined in the 1970s by social engineer Jacques Fresco. He understood back then that society was on a collision course with nature and itself. Unsustainable on every level. And if things didn't change, we would destroy ourselves one way or another. Are all of these things you are saying, Jacques, could they be built with what we know today, or are you guessing based on what we know today? No. All of these things can be built with what we know today. It would take 10 years to change the surface of the Earth, to rebuild the world into a second Garden of Eden. The choice lies with you. The stupidity of a nuclear arms race, the development of weapons, trying to solve your problems politically by electing this political party or that political party, that all politics is immersed in corruption. Let me say it again. Communism, socialism, fascism, the Democrats, the liberals, we want to absorb human beings. All organizations that believe in a better life for man. There are no Negro problems, or Polish problems, or Jewish problems, or Greek problems, or women's problems. They're human problems. I'm not afraid of anybody. I don't work for anyone. No one can discharge me. I have no boss. I'm afraid to live in the society we live in today. Our society cannot be maintained by this type of incompetence. It was great, the free enterprise system, about 35 years ago. That was the last of its usefulness. Now we've got to change our way of thinking or perish. The horror movies of the future will be our society, the way it didn't work. And politics would be part of a horror movie. Well, lots of people today use the term cold science because it's analytical, and they don't even know what analytical means. Science means closer approximations to the way the world really works. So it's telling the truth is what it is. A scientist doesn't try to get along with people. They tell them what their findings are. They have to question all things. And if some scientist comes up with an experiment that shows certain materials have certain strengths, other scientists have to be able to duplicate that experiment and come up with the same results. Even if a scientist feels that an aeroplane wing, due to mathematics or calculations, can hold up a given amount of weight, they still pile sandbags on it to see when it breaks. And they say, you know, my calculations are right, or they are not correct. I love that system because it's free of bias and free of thinking that math can solve all the problems. You have to put your math to test also. I think that every system that can be put to test should be put to test, and that all decisions should be based upon research. A resource-based economy is simply the scientific method applied to social concern, an approach utterly absent in the world today. Society is a technical invention, and the most efficient methods of optimized human health, physical production, distribution, city infrastructure and the like reside in the field of science and technology, not politics or monetary economics. It operates in the same systematic way as, say, an aeroplane, and there is no Republican or liberal way to build an aeroplane. It's not politicians that can solve problems. They have no technical capabilities. They don't know how to solve problems. Even if they were sincere, they don't know how to solve problems. It's the technicians that produce the desalination plants. It's the technicians that give you electricity, that give you motor vehicles, that heat your house and cool it in summertime. It's technology that solves problems, not politics. Politics cannot solve problems because they're not trained to do so. Likewise, nature itself is the physical referent we use to prove our science, and it is a set system, emerging only from our increased understanding of it. In fact, it has no regard for what you subjectively think or believe to be true. Rather, it gives you an option. You can learn to fall in line with its natural laws and conduct yourself accordingly, invariably creating good health and sustainability, or you can go against the current to no avail. It doesn't matter how much you believe you can just stand up right now and walk on the wall next to you. The law of gravity will not allow it. If you do not eat, you will die. If you are not touched as an infant, you will die. As harsh as it may sound, nature is a dictatorship, and we can either listen to it and become in harmony with it, or suffer the inevitable adverse consequences.
Wikipedia. Right to property. The right to property is often classified as a human right for natural persons regarding their personal possessions. John Locke. Natural rights to life, liberty, and property.
This is a false premise. Property intrinsically avoids nature. There's nothing natural about it.
This land was purchased legally.
You destroyed a natural habitat, drained its resources, then abandoned it to rot. There is nothing legal about that.
Arguments for property will be dressed up nicely, yet the contradiction that selfishness equals selflessness will remain. Firstly, Mother Nature provides laws, not rights. Rights are a fictional political ideology. These laws consist of if-then statements. If a person is treated badly, then they'll mirror and magnify negative behaviour. And property has come from the social conditions from us treating each other badly. It's not a natural right. Why? Well, there are three things that allow property to exist: defense, offense, and expansion of territory. It's very easy to deduce that violence and war are bad for our health. Only a psychopath is unable to piece together emotion with logic in a balance and would consider property a human nature or a natural right. It is increasing our scientific understandings cooperatively that progresses humanity, not dividing ourselves with property. Take the Wikipedia article on trade, for example. Trade is the voluntary exchange of goods, services, or both. Trade is also called commerce. Again, right off the bat, that's a false premise. Trading is violence, not voluntary or equal. It's two parties both attempting to use deception to gain the better end of the deal. Using such words to describe trading is propaganda. On a social scale, we're ignorantly and religiously choosing to use this dysfunctional violent social system at our own detriment, but on the individual level, this is not voluntary. It is forced through a mass of apathetic people, status quo defenders, whose minds have been corrupted. The masses' assumption, if trading didn't benefit society, then people wouldn't do it. The reason why people trade is because it benefits both parties. It's just that, an assumption, talking out of your ass. Not critically thinking about the effects of what you're doing, shrugging off science. These are hallmarks of a psychopath. Vanity, shallow personalities are awful for our social health. Nothing in all the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. So, a resource-based economy is nothing more than a set of proven, life-supporting understandings where all decisions are based upon optimized human and environmental sustainability. It takes into account the empirical life ground which every human being shares as a need, regardless again of their political or religious philosophy. There is no cultural relativism to this approach. It isn't a matter of opinion. Human needs are human needs, and having access to the necessities of life, such as clean air, nutritious food, and clean water, along with a positively reinforcing, stable, nurturing, non-violent environment, is demanded for our mental and physical health, our evolutionary fitness, and hence the species' survival itself. A resource-based economy would be based upon available resources. You can't just bring a lot of people to an island or build a city of 50,000 people without having access to the necessities of life. So when I use the term a comprehensive systems approach, I'm talking about doing an inventory of the area first and determining what that area can supply. Not just architectural approach, not just design approach, but design must be based on all of the requirements to enhance human life, and that's what I mean by an integrated way of thinking. Food, clothing, shelter, warmth, love, all those things are necessary, and if you deprive people of any of them, you have a lesser human being, less capable of functioning. As previously outlined, a resource-based economy's ground-up, global, systems approach to extraction, production, and distribution is based upon a set of true economic mechanisms or strategies which guarantee efficiency and sustainability in every area of the economy. So, continuing this train of thought regarding logical design, what is next in our equation? Where does all this materialize? Cities. The advent of the city is a defining feature of modern civilization. Its role is to enable efficient access to the necessities of life, along with increased social support and community interaction. So, how would we go about designing an ideal city? What shape should we make it? Square? Trapezoid? Well, given we are going to be moving around the thing, we might as well make it as equidistant as possible for ease. Hence, the circle. What should the city contain? Well, naturally we need a residential area, a goods production area, a power generation area, an agricultural area. But we also need nurturing as human beings, hence culture, nature, recreation, and education. So, let's include a nice open park, an entertainment events area for cultural purposes and socializing, and educational and research facilities. And since we are going to be working with a circle, it seems rational to place these functions in belts based on the amount of land required for each goal, along with ease of access. Very good. Now let's get down to specifics. First, we are going to need to consider the core infrastructure or intestines of the city organism. These would be the water, goods, waste, and energy transport channels. Just as we have water and sewage systems under our cities today, we would extend this channeling concept to integrate waste recycling and delivery itself. No more mailmen or rubbish collectors. It is built right in. We could even use automated pneumatic tubes and similar technologies. Same goes for transport. It needs to be integrated and strategically designed to reduce or even remove the need for wasteful, independent automobiles. Electric trams, conveyors, transveyors, and maglevs, which can take you virtually anywhere in the city, even up and down, along with connecting you to other cities as well. And of course, in the event a car is required, it is automated by satellite for safety and integrity. In fact, this automation technology is in working order right now. Automobile accidents kill about 1.2 million people every single year, injuring about 50 million. This is absurd and doesn't have to occur.
I like it. Jeez. I like it a lot.
Yeah, spectacular.
It really
is. These engineers are wizards. They really are. So we're going into autopilot mode now. So much like cruise control, I'm just going to turn it on. At that point, my hands are off the wheel, my foot's off the accelerator, off the brake. The top camera is going to read that 30 mile per hour sign. It's going to adjust the speed while navigating through the lane course. Once again, not touching a thing. The car's driving itself. The bottom camera is reviewing the lines. Top camera is reading signs. It's going to read that 25 mile per hour sign. Once it straightens out, she's going to slow down automatically. I'm going to press the blinker. She's going to initiate a lane change automatically, all by herself.
Between efficient city design and automated driverless cars, this death toll could be virtually eliminated.
So, what is ET3? ET3 stands for Evacuated Tube Transport Technologies. ET3 is quite literally space travel on Earth. a global transportation system that is environmentally friendly, low cost, secure, silent, fast, and safe. If you take aspects of maglev technology, which have been in use for over 50 years, and wrap it in a 5-foot diameter tube, and pump out the air, you are then left with airless and friction-free conditions needed for space travel on Earth.
Architecture. On the macro level, we have our city in a circular shape, so continuing this theme, this decagon-shaped building would provide maximum efficiency. With the elevator in the center, surrounded by stairs, this building could provide a variety of options for the occupants to enjoy. A restaurant, an office, an asylum, a disco. There could also be a hydroponics or aquaponics floor. Also, wind power and solar power collectors on the rooftop. The most unique element could be a small train that loops around the city that could visit one of the floors. When we surpass the social values which hold back science, we'll no longer be building unnecessary, traditional, and inefficient rectangle and temple-like structures. Activity will be concentrated for the sake of social efficiency, since we are one human family. Life is easier in collaboration with each other, without a lack of privacy, without unnecessary separation, with room for everyone. Share the whole with all. The time is right for betterment. Let's build this house now. Agriculture. Today, through our haphazard cost-cutting industrial methods, using pesticides, excessive fertilizers, and other means, we have successfully destroyed much of the arable land on this planet. Not to mention, also extensively poisoning our bodies.
All the food is poison. All the food is poison.
In fact, industrial and agricultural chemical toxins now show up in virtually every human being tested, including infants. Fortunately, there is a glaring alternative, the soilless mediums of hydroponics and aeroponics, which also reduce nutrient and water requirements by up to 75% of current usage. Food can now be organically grown on an industrial scale in enclosed vertical farms, such as in 50-story 1-acre plots, virtually eliminating the need for pesticides and hydrocarbons in general. This is the future of industrial food cultivation, efficient, clean, and abundant. So such advanced systems would be, in part, what comprise our agricultural belt, producing all the food required for the entire city's population, with no need to import anything from the outside, saving time, waste, and energy. Aquaponics.
So now we're going to share with you guys what an aquaponics system is, and it's pretty much right here. As you guys can see, we got a big tank on the bottom, and this is simply a fish tank. It's holding fish. There's lots of fish growing in there, the tilapia that you can't eat or just keep as pets. And then what happens is the fish are living in the fish tank, and they're getting fed with the fish food, which is the only input in this system. The fish eat the fish food, and then guess what? They create waste, much like us, right? The fish make the pee and the poop, and then that basically gets in the water, and then what they do is they take the water and they pump it up into this top bed. And in this top bed, they pump the water up, and then the water filters through this rock here, the cinder, and it basically filters down and then goes back in and then comes back out and sprays back into the tank there. You can see a little where it's spraying out. And what the plants do is the plants actually filter the fish pee and poop and put it back into the water.
Want to feed the world? Let's start by asking, how are we going to feed ourselves? Or better, how can we create conditions that enable every community to feed itself? To do that, don't look at the agribusiness model for the future. It's really old and it's tired. It's high on capital, chemistry, and machines. And it's never produced anything really good to eat. Instead, let's look to the ecological model. That's the one that relies on 2 billion years of on-the-job experience. Look to Miguel. Farmers like Miguel. Farms that aren't worlds unto themselves. Farms that restore instead of deplete. Farms that farm extensively instead of just intensively. Farmers that are not just producers, but experts in relationships. Because they're the ones that are experts in flavor, too. And if I'm going to be really honest, they're a better chef than I'll ever be.
Somebody says to me, are you a vegetarian? You know, you don't eat meat, or you eat only organic foods. I used to be a vegetarian till I saw cancer on rabbits, which are vegetarians. I saw cancer on cows, and they found cancer on dinosaur bones. The Venus flytrap closes on insects.
This plant is in for a shock. The professor burns a leaf. The plant shows a definite electrical reaction to the flame.
And I used to think, well, the thing's a vegetable, doesn't feel anything.
Hey, you! Me? Yes, you. You know what'd be good for you? Not eating meat. Oh, okay. Do you wanna know why? Sure. You don't look like this, or this, or this. Oh, okay. Well, I don't look like this, or this, or this either. Pseudoscience.
And so we think that's how the brain evolved. We have an opposable thumb. We have a language of maybe 5,000 to 10,000 words. And we have eyesight, that is stereo eyesight, the eyesight of a predator, and predators seem to be smarter than prey.
And speaking of energy, the energy belt would work in a systems approach to extract electricity from our abundant renewable mediums, specifically wind, solar, geothermal, and heat differentials, and if near water potentials, tidal and wave power. To avoid intermittency and to make sure a positive net energy return occurs, these mediums would operate in an integrated system, powering each other when needed, while also storing excessive energy to large supercapacitors under the ground, so nothing can go to waste. And not only does the city power itself, particular structures will also power independently and generate electricity through photovoltaic paints, structural pressure transducers, the thermocouple effect, and other current but underutilized technologies.
Now, we recently expanded our research facility in Antarctica in the hope of developing cheap, renewable sources of energy that we might eliminate the world's reliance on fossil fuels. Now, it doesn't take a political scientist to see that our Cold War with the Russians isn't ideological. It's based upon fear of not having enough. But if we made resources infinite, we make war obsolete.
But of course, this begs the question, how does this technology, and goods in general, get created in the first place? This brings us to production. The industrial belt, apart from having hospitals and the like, would be the hub of factory production. Completely localized overall, it would of course obtain raw materials by way of the global resource management system just discussed, with demand being generated by the population of the city itself. As far as the mechanics of production, we need to discuss a new, powerful phenomenon which was sparked very recently in human history and is on pace to changing everything. It's called mechanization, or the automation of labor. Gentlemen, ladies, the future is now. To bring goods to an exploding global economy and to deliver those goods faster, cheaper, and safer, Mon Robotics do much of the work in the world's largest seaport, Rotterdam. Moving cargo is a traditional strength of the Dutch, who shuttle more freight in fewer man-hours than any port in the world. And now, the Dutch have modelled the future of cargo management. Completely containerized cargo arrives and departs on ships a third of a mile long, 24 hours a day with short turnaround. Smart car technology provides greater security and improved accountability with no need for unreliable human surveillance. Hey Carv, Isn't technology the fucking bomb? Huh? And global positioning systems guide each container to its proper spot on board or on the docks, while state-of-the-art computers track shipments in every part. Some of the systems you're seeing have already been upgraded. Rotterdam now works 350 million tons of cargo annually, leaving Singapore a distant second. What kind of man hours are the Steve Dawes clocking over there? You know, I don't have those figures handy, I'm sorry. But Rotterdam does employ 4,000 people. 4,000 people to move 350 million tons a year? That's right. That's efficiency, Nat. By eliminating some of the more dangerous work, the Rotterdam technologies have reduced employee work-related accidents and injuries by 60%. I think we can all be pretty happy with that, can't we? Question? Yes? You can't get hurt if you ain't working, right? Yeah, the GPS readings, are they exactly... No, they work with all kinds of cargo and all kinds of weather. You're talking history, right? I'm talking now. Because down here it's still, who's your old man till you've got kids your own? Then it's, who's your son? But after the horror movie I've seen today, robots! Piers full of robots! My kid will be lucky if he's even punching numbers 5 years from now. Well, if you look around you, you'll notice that almost everything we use today is built automatically. Your shoes, your clothes, your home appliances, your car, and so on. They are all built by machines in an automatic way. Can we say that the society has not been influenced by these major technological advancements? Of course not. These systems really dictate new structures and new needs, and they make a lot of other things obsolete. So, we have been going up in the development and use of technology in an exponential way. So, definitely, automation is going to continue. You cannot stop technologies that just make sense. Labour automation through technology is at the bottom of every major social transformation in human history. From the agricultural revolution and the invention of the plough, to the industrial revolution and the invention of the powered machine, to the information age we live in now, through essentially the invention of advanced electronics and computers. And with regard to advanced production methods today, mechanisation is now evolving on its own, moving away from the traditional method of assembling component parts into a configuration into an advanced method of creating entire products in one single process. Like most engineers, I'm fascinated by biology because it is so full of examples of extraordinary pieces of engineering. What biology is the study of things that copy themselves. Of course, that's as good a definition of life as we've got. Again, as an engineer, I've always been intrigued by the idea of machines copying themselves. RepRap is a three-dimensional printer. That's to say, it is a printer that you plug into a computer, and instead of making two-dimensional sheets of paper with patterns on, it makes real, physical, three-dimensional objects. Now there's nothing new about that. 3D printers have now been around for about 30 years. The big thing about RepRap is that it prints most of its own parts. So if you've got one, you can make another one and give it to a friend, as well as being able to print lots of useful things. From the simple printing of basic household goods in your home, to the printing of an entire automobile body in one swoop, advanced automated 3D printing now has the potential to transform virtually every field of production, including home construction. Contour crafting is actually a fabrication technology. The so-called 3D printing, when you directly build 3D objects from a computer model, using contour crafting, it will be possible to build a 2,000 square foot home entirely by the machine in one day. The reason that people are interested in automating construction is that it really brings a lot of benefits. For example, construction is pretty labor intensive, and although it provides jobs for a sector of the society, it also has issues and complications. For example, construction is the most dangerous job that there is. It is worse than mining and agriculture, that has the highest level of fatality in almost every country. Another issue is the waste. An average home in the United States has 3 to 7 tons of waste. So this is huge if we look at the impact of construction. And knowing about 40% of all materials in the world are used in construction. So a big waste of energy and resources, and big damage to the environment as well. Making homes using hammers and nails and wood with the state of our technology today is really absurd. and will go the way of our labour class in regards to manufacturing in the United States. Recently, there was a study by economist David Autor of MIT that states that our middle class is obsolete and being replaced by automation. Quite simply, mechanization is more productive, efficient, and sustainable than human labour in virtually every sector of the economy today. Machines do not need vacations, breaks, insurance, pensions, and they can work 24 hours a day, every day. The output potential and accuracy compared to human labour is unmatched. The bottom line, repetitive human labour is becoming obsolete and impractical across the world. And the unemployment you see around you today is fundamentally the result of this evolution of efficiency in technology. For years, market economists have dismissed this growing pattern, which could be called technological unemployment, because of the fact that new sectors always seem to emerge to reabsorb the displaced workers. Today, the service sector is the only real hub left and currently employs over 80% of the American workforce, with most industrialized countries maintaining a similar proportion. However, this sector is now being challenged increasingly by automated kiosks, automated restaurants, and even automated stores. Economists today are finally acknowledging what they have been denying for years. Not only is technological unemployment exasperating the current labour crisis we see across the world due to the global economic downturn, but the more the recession deepens, the faster the industries are mechanising. The catch, which is not realised, is that the faster they mechanise to save money, the more they displace people, the more they reduce public purchasing power. This means that while the corporation can produce everything more cheaply, fewer and fewer people will actually have money to buy anything, regardless of how cheap they become. The bottom line is that the labour for income game is slowly coming to an end. In fact, if you take a moment to reflect on the jobs which are in existence today, which automation could take over right now if applied, 75% of the global workforce could be replaced by mechanization tomorrow. There would be no outsourcing of jobs if they cared about people. Industry does not care. They only hire people because it hasn't been automated yet. So don't talk about decency and ethics. We cannot afford it and remain in business. And this is why, in a resource-based economy, there is no monetary market system, no money or trading at all, for there is no need. A resource-based economy recognizes the efficiency of mechanization and accepts it for what it offers. It doesn't fight it like we do today. Why? Because it is irresponsible not to, given any interest in efficiency and sustainability. And this brings us back to our city system. In the center is the Central Dome, which not only houses the educational facilities and transportation hub, it also hosts the mainframe that runs the city's technical operations. The city is, in fact, one big automated machine. It has sensors in all its technical belts to track the progress of agriculture, energy gathering, production, distribution, and the like. Now, would people be needed to oversee these operations in the event of a malfunction or the like? Most probably yes, but that number would decrease over time as improvements continue. However, as of today, maybe 3% of the city population would be needed for this job when you break it down. And I can assure you that in an economic system which is actually designed to take care of you and secure your well-being without you having to submit to a private dictatorship on a daily basis, usually to a job that is either technically unnecessary or socially pointless, while often struggling with debt that doesn't exist just to make ends meet, I can guarantee you that people will volunteer their time left and right to maintain and improve a system that actually takes care of them. And coupled with this issue of incentive comes the common assumption that if there isn't some external pressure for one to work for a living, people would just sit around, do nothing, and turn into fat, lazy blobs. This is nonsense. The labour system we have today is in fact the generator of laziness, not a resolver of it. If you think back to when you were a child, full of life, interested in new things to understand, likely creating and exploring, But as time went on, the system pushed you into the focus of figuring out how to make money. And from early education to study at a university, you are narrowed.
One day I'll be rich from making these actual things in my factory. And then you won't be rich and I'll be non-lonely because I'll have money to keep me company. That's a fucking bad plan.
Only to emerge as a creature which serves as a cog in a wheel in a model that sends all the fruits to the upper 1%. We must do away with the absolutely specious notion that everybody has to earn a living. It is a fact today that 1 in 10,000 of us can make a technological breakthrough capable of supporting all the rest. The true business of people should be to go back to school and think about whatever it was they were thinking about before somebody came along and told them they had to earn a living. Scientific studies have now shown that people are, in fact, not motivated by monetary reward when it comes to ingenuity and creation. The creation itself is the reward. You're brought up to believe that you shall earn your living by the sweat of your brow. That holds people back. Drudgery, repetitive jobs make people ignorant. It robs them. In our society, which is a resource-based economy, machines free people. You see, we can't imagine that because we've never known that kind of world.
I'm a very, very lazy person. I believe that people shouldn't have to work. So I spend 40 or 50 or 60 hours a week working on trying to remove the need for human beings to do work. Now by this I don't mean creative work, I don't mean interesting work. I think that the human has the absolute right to go and do what they want to do, when they want to do it, as long as that doesn't interfere with anyone else's rights. But I don't see that humans should have to spend 40 or 50 hours a week essentially slaving away doing repetitive mundane tasks that machines could easily do.
From efficiency principles being built into software to generate housing designs, to then be printed by a 3D printer, to classical music being generated by software, machines assisting us with our creativity make life increasingly more interesting. It is our ignorant social values, trading, money, religion, and politics that are incompatible with this technological progress.
In real terms, anyone caught downloading popular shows like Game of Thrones or House of Cards could be sued for an unlimited dollar sum.
And can only more violently clash if we refuse to change. When we surpass the concept of requiring people to do monotonous labour to live, while impossibly competing with technology, and allowing machines to do the boring labour that needs to be done, the incentive that arises will be to improve technology in all its forms. The fear people have of technology is unfounded, as it is us who decides whether we use technology for an ignorant, sick purpose, such as weapons, drones, bombs, etc., or the construction of a society which takes care of itself and the environment. The measure of a civilization is how it treats its weakest members. Currently, machines follow exact, programmed instructions without any conscious thought as to whether they're doing something productive or destructive. On a science fiction tone, if a more conscious machine intelligence arises, it would likely see long-term survival as a more logical choice than, say, the TV show Robot Wars or BattleBots. This is a projection from our war culture onto technology. Propaganda masking as entertainment. The smarter your kids are, the better my life will be, because they will be contributing more constructively to the environment and to my life, because everything that we devise within a resource-based economy would be applied to society. There would be nothing to hold it back. If people have access to the necessities of life without servitude, debt, barter, trade, they behave very differently. You want all these things available without a price tag. Now then, you gotta have a price tag. What will motivate people? If a man gets everything he wants, he will just lay around in the sun. This is the myth they perpetuate. People in our culture are trained to believe that the monetary system produces incentive. If they have access to things, why should they want to do anything that will lose their incentive? That's what you're taught to support the monetary system. When people have access to the necessities of life, their incentives change. What about the moon and the stars? New incentives arise. If you make a painting that you enjoy, you will enjoy giving it to other people, not selling it.
You know, the harder you work, the more you should be paid. But I think that's a very demeaning conception of not only of what work is, but what human beings are like.
When you think back on what you've had to do for these last 5 years, what does it make you feel?
Ani memiri lalela. Nta dushu ben dimi kono na kwa. Aben dimi ke kuma shama jigin ta dushu kuna.
The cocoa goes into making chocolate. Have you ever tasted chocolate? In the rest of the world, millions and millions of people eat chocolate. What would you tell those people?
Nimba feka kuma fo ma sisa. Olumino ma sanga ta dumu sisa. Ni segala la kasron ta fu sura la ka dumu. Bena olu le doya. Ba fo olu fe olu benta bashi le dumna. Ni be segala la kasron ta tono sura la. Olu be la ba kana olu bena le sanga ta dumu. Kasron me baraka min fale te fu sura fu dinefe. Molu le doya. Fu fe benta bashi le dumna.
Money doesn't exist in the 24th century.
No money? You mean you don't get paid?
The acquisition of wealth is no longer the driving force in our lives. We work to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
Money, in fact, appears to only serve as an incentive for repetitive, mundane actions, a role we have now shown can be replaced by machine. So when it comes to innovation, the actual use of the human mind, the monetary incentive has proven to be a hindrance, interfering and detracting from creative thought. And this might explain why Nikola Tesla, the Wright brothers, and other inventors who have contributed massively to our current world, never showed a monetary incentive to do so. Money is in fact a false incentive and causes 100 times more distortion than it does contribution.
Good morning, class. Please settle down. The first thing I would like to do is go around the room and ask what everyone would like to do when they grow up. Who would like to go first? Okay, how about you, Sarah? When I grow up, I want to work at Hungry Jack's like my mum. Oh, family tradition, eh? How about you, Linda? When I grow up, I'm going to be a stripper on Hindley Street in Adelaide. Or maybe a prostitute in a brothel in a South Australian suburb.
Don't have cash on you. Our brothels now have ATMs located in the hallways. For only $200, love can be yours. Women TM. They'll only love you if you have money.
Another $13 for a 5-second hug.
Or maybe a phone sex worker.
And I work on an adult sex line to make ends meet.
Or maybe a maid prostitute. Gotta get them bills paid. Ah, glamour girl, huh? Very ambitious. How about you, Tommy?
When I grow up, I'm gonna be a rich, elitist, and businessman who works on Wall Street and profits off of the collapse of foreign economies.
Enterprising, and great to see some multicultural interest.
It's not hard for Romanian pimps to lure girls away from this sort of poverty. Sorana knew she would be working as a prostitute, and she knew it was legal. Sorana worked in this flat-rate brothel. She had to service up to 40 men a day until the authorities closed the brothel down. But they only did so for reasons of public hygiene.
Non-stop să te curci cu bărbații. Deci nu mâncat la timp, nu dormit, stres mare, nervi, trebuia să nu refuz niciun client cum ar veni. Nu, trebuia să fii... Nu știu, n-am cuvinte să explic, e rău.
As stated before, a resource-based economy applies the scientific method to social concern, and this isn't limited to simply technical efficiency. It also has the consideration of human and social well-being directly and what comprises it. What good is a social system if, in the end, it doesn't produce happiness and peaceful coexistence? So, it is important to point out that with the removal of the money trading system and the necessities of life provided, we would see a global reduction in crime by about 95% almost immediately. For there is nothing to steal, embezzle, scam or the like. 95% of all people in prisons today are there due to some monetary related crime or drug abuse. And drug abuse is a disorder, not a crime.
Now, alcohol has been known in the Western world for thousands of years, and there was plenty of drunkenness, even in ancient times. But there was no alcoholism, for the most part. Alcoholism came around in the 18th century with the rise of capitalism. You can make a very good case that one of the medical outcomes, or one of the health outcomes of capitalism is addiction. In other words, can you understand people in isolation from the system in which they live? Well, the answer is that you can't, because the biology of human beings is shaped by the psychological and social environment in which they live.
So, what about the other 5%, the truly violent? Often seeming to some as being violent for the sake of being violent. Are they just evil people?
Why don't you just get the fucking cop's camera to shine it up your fucking pussy and film the little criminal coming out? This is crime prevention. Here comes another illiterate, unwanted child. Cuff him, Badano.
That'll teach him. There is no human nature. There's human behaviour, and that's always been changed throughout history. You're not born with bigotry and greed and corruption and hatred. You pick that up within the society.
Sells blames much of his murderous rage on sexual abuse he says he suffered as a child.
You also killed children.
Some get killed, yes.
Now, why would that happen?
I didn't want them to live through the pain I lived through.
It's biology plus environment. It's biology coming together with environmental insults which raise the odds of an individual becoming a violent criminal offender.
Y'all don't understand, man. Y'all don't get it. Grow up in this shit. All my people, man. My father, my uncles, my cousins. It's just what we do. You just live with this shit until you can't breathe no more. I swear to God, I was courtside for 8 months, and I was free in jail than I was at home.
We let a jury decide what's true.
The reason that I frankly think it's a waste of time to engage in moral value judgments about people's violence is because it doesn't advance by one iota our understanding of either the causes or the prevention of the violent behaviour. People sometimes ask if I believe in forgiving criminals. My answer to that is no. I don't believe in forgiveness any more than I believe in condemnation. It's only if we as a society can take the same attitude of treating violence as a problem in public health and preventive medicine, rather than as a moral evil. It's only when we make that change in our own attitudes and assumptions and values that we will actually succeed in reducing the level of violence rather than stimulating it, which is what we do now.
Such a civilized society, America, where this two-term president refused to pardon Ricky Ray Rector from execution. A man so severely retarded that when the guards interrupted his last meal to lead him to his execution, he assured them it was okay because he would just have to finish it when they got back.
Mom, I know your intentions are good, but aren't the police a protective force that maintains the status quo for the wealthy elites? Don't you think we ought to attack the roots of social problems instead of jamming people into overcrowded prisons?
Research on violence and criminality has also revealed a link between aggression and diminished activity in the frontal lobes, which play a vital role in impulse control.
Essentially, I'm a spy. I don't feel any guilt.
The psychopath has learned that there are certain facial expressions, forms of body language that are associated with what other people say is a particular emotion.
The way we treat people has a physiological impact. When you stick them in jails, when you treat them with isolation, when you ostracize them, you are hurting them. And furthermore, who is it that's jailed? Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, a trauma expert at Boston University, has said that 99% of the people in the criminal justice system are traumatized children.
What if anybody thinks the state of Texas is teaching anybody anything but putting this poison into me? They're even dumber and crueler than I am. Because this isn't right. If you're looking for the guilty, you need only look into a mirror.
Last year, there were more corpses on the 3 Law & Order franchises, which are all set in Manhattan. There were more dead people shown on that show than there were actual homicides in Manhattan.
There's no such thing as an evil person. There's only sickness and health.
We take people who are abused to start with, and then we make them a social enemy. And they're the ones who make up our jail population. So when we try and rescue them if we can, and if we fail to rescue them, then we persecute them for the rest of their lives.
The death penalty is the best legislation the government ever put in.
The more justice you seek, the more hurt you become. Because there's no such thing as justice. There is whatever there is out there. That's it. In other words, if people are conditioned to be racist bigots, if they are brought up in an environment that advocates that, why do you blame the person for it? They are a victim of a subculture. Therefore, they have to be helped.
In hog hunting and stuff, I mean, what is a gun? A gun is a combat weapon, you know?
And you want to give people a file to build one?
That's right, yeah.
Although Cody says he's not willing to go to jail over this, if American laws prevent him from moving forward, he may look for another country whose laws allow it.
We've met people who are using this technology to print heart valves, ears, nose, skin.
Sure.
I'm sure there are people out there who could say, why do you have to print this gun when there are so many positive uses for this technology?
For us, we're not makers thinking, what's the best thing we can make? It's a political project. How do you achieve universal access to the firearm?
The point is, we have to redesign the environment that produces aberrant behaviour. That's the problem, not putting a person in jail. That's why judges, lawyers, freedom of choice, such concepts are dangerous because it gives you misinformation that the person is bad or that person is a serial killer. Serial killers are made, just like soldiers become serial killers with a machine gun. They become killing machines, but nobody looks at them as murderers or assassins because that's natural.
Better than staying at home, isn't it, sir? Eh? I mean, at home, if you kill someone, they arrest you, eh? They give you a gun and show you what to do, sir.
The criminal justice system, which I think is a very apt way of putting it, it's a criminal system. The justice system is criminal. It's based on the very idea that people are making choices when they become addicts. If they're not making choices, why punish them for it?
Well, Sean, the law is a man-made construct of rules by which we govern our day-to-day lives.
Yes, I think leave the jokes to me, David.
It's clear that a court of law is fundamentally religious in nature, with conceptions of good versus evil, rather than treating violence as an issue in public health, and recognizing the market social system itself as the encourager of violence.
You are amoral, are you not? You are feeding off the violence and the despair of the drug trade. You're stealing from those who themselves are stealing the lifeblood from our city. You are a parasite who leeches off
just like you,
the culture of drug. Excuse me? What?
I got the shotgun. You got the briefcase. It's on the game though, right?
Additionally, the very concept of a judge is simply someone exercising their addiction to power in an arena where people are prone to corruption.
Shortly thereafter, both boys were taken away from me. No contact with them whatsoever. My judge was retaliating against me for me being vocal.
Violence is not an act, it is a process. It transfers and mutates within our species due to our failure to see the truth of our responsibility to each other. The more we violate, exploit, and abuse, the more we can expect the trend to continue. It is a psychological law of nature. So we blame people. We say, well, this guy was a Nazi, he tortured Jews. No, he was brought up to torture Jews. Once you accept the fact that people have individual choices and they are free to make those choices, free to make choices means without being influenced and I can't understand that at all. All of us are influenced in all of our choices by the culture we live in, by our parents, and by the values that dominate. So we're influenced. So there can't be free choices. What's the greatest country in the world? The true answer? I've been all over the world, and I don't know enough about different cultures to answer that question. I don't know anybody that speaks that way. They say, it's the good old USA, the greatest country in the world. There is no survey. Have you been to India? No. Have you been to England? No. Have you been to France? No. Then what do you make your assumptions on? They can't answer. They get mad at you. They say, God damn it, who the hell are you to tell me what to think? You know, don't forget, you're dealing with aberrated people. They are not responsible for their answers. They're victims of culture, and that means they have been influenced by their culture. Nationalism does nothing but teach you to hate people you've never met and to take pride in accomplishments you had no part in. You can't have capitalism without racism. God and country are an unbeatable team. They break all records for oppression and bloodshed.
Watch. And remember, sports fans, patriotism is a form of racism.
The whole system that we live in drills into us that we're powerless, that we're weak, that our society is evil, that it's crowded, etc. and so forth. It's all a big fat lie. We are powerful, beautiful, extraordinary. There is no reason why we cannot understand who we truly are, where we are going. There is no reason why the average individual cannot be fully empowered. We are incredibly powerful beings. I think I've spent 30 years of my life, the first 30, trying to become something. I wanted to become good at things. I wanted to become good at tennis. I wanted to become good at school and grades and everything I kind of viewed in that perspective. I'm not okay the way I am, but if I got good at things and I realized that I had the game wrong, the game was to find out what I already was. Now in our culture, we've been trained for individual differences to stand out. So you look at each person and immediately it is brighter, dumber, older, younger, richer, poorer, and we make all these dimensional distinctions, we put them in categories and treat them that way. And we get so that we only see others as separate from ourselves in the ways in which they're separate. And one of the dramatic characteristics of experience is being with another person and suddenly seeing the ways in which they're like you, not different from you. And experiencing the fact that which is essence in you, in which is essence in me, is indeed one. The understanding that there is no they, there's no other. It is all one. And I wasn't born Richard Albert, I was just born as a human being. And then I learned this whole business of who I am and whether I'm good or bad or achieving or not. All that's learned along the way. The old appeals to racial, sexual and religious chauvinism, to rabid nationalist fervour, are beginning not to work. A new consciousness is developing which sees the Earth as a single organism and recognises that an organism at war with itself is doomed. Bill Hicks used to finish his shows with this. Life's like a ride in an amusement park. And when you go on it, you think it's real because that's how powerful our minds are. And the ride goes up and down and round and round. It has thrills and chills and it's very brightly coloured. And it's very loud and it's fun for a while. Some have been on the ride for a long time and they begin to question, is this real or is this just a ride? And others have remembered and they come back to us and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid ever, because this is just a ride. And we kill those people. Shut him up. I've got a lot invested in this ride. Shut him up. Look at my furrows of worry. Look at my big bank account and my family. This has to be real. It's just a ride. But we always kill those good guys who try and tell us that. You ever notice that? And let the demons run amok? But it doesn't matter because it's just a ride. And we can change it any time we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings and money. Just a choice right now between fear and love. If you'd like to watch this documentary in full, visit youtube.com/user/social atmosphere. The documentary is on the front page.